If you're planning a road trip around Australia, or if you're like kind of curious about road trips but aren't sure if it's your vibe, stick around because I have a bunch of tips for you. Hi, I'm Rose. My partner and I have done a bunch of road trips around Australia. We've gone, around the country. We've crossed the Nullarbor twice. We've gone up and down the WA coast a bunch of times. And over that time, I have collected a bunch of tips and tricks that I like to share with friends. And I thought, why not share it with you? When I tell people that I like camping or road trips, they're usually pretty surprised. I think it's because I give off pretty like inside girl energy, which is true. I do love being comfortable. However, I also really love going out and exploring Australia. I love the beach. I love going out for bushwalks. However, they are correct. I do really like to be comfortable. And so that is reflected in the way that I like to go camping and road tripping. And when I was looking at content before we went on our trip, trying to get an idea of what to expect, there was a lot of like influencer type content, not really like cozy, like regular girl kind of type vibe videos. So today I thought I'll share some tips, tricks, and lessons that I've learned through our road trips and kind of share how to make it comfortable. Like road tripping and camping does not have to be a challenging experience. We make it relaxed and fun, and hopefully you will be able to as well. I will say these trips we did before we got a puppy. So I will make a separate video talking about how to do road trips with a dog. And if you have any questions, just pop them down in the comments below. All right, let's start with the first thing, organizing the trip. Ask yourself, is there somewhere I need to be by a specific time? So for our first road trip around the country, we were going from Sydney to Perth for a particular festival. We're from Perth, we wanted to see friends and go to that festival with them. So we knew we needed to be there by a specific date. And from there you can kind of go, okay, well, how much leave do I have? How much time do I have? And how far can we go during that time? Some things you're gonna have to like do some maths with is how far you're willing to drive in a day. So we were pulling some ridiculous days on that first trip, which we don't do anymore. Normally now we aim for like a 7-hour day or an 8-hour day at a maximum. I think at one point on that trip, we tried to do a 12-hour day, which I really don't recommend. So I'll be like, okay, I want to be at this city on this date, and I'm willing to drive like 700 kilometers a day, and I'll basically go on maps and I'll look and I'll go backwards along the road and go 700 kilometers. Where would I be the day before, and kind of like work backwards. It's like doing a puzzle backwards. And then once you kind of get an idea of like which rough areas you're going to be and when, you can kind of manipulate those, like stretch a day a bit longer, go a bit shorter, so you actually get to visit places you want to see. When you're thinking about where you want to go, if you've not traveled in Australia before, please look up the weather depending on which part of Australia you're in. For example, in the top end, we've got wet seasons and dry seasons. We've also got lots of fire seasons, flood seasons. You're going to want to think about which parts of the country you want to be in depending on the weather. And you might also want to think about school holidays. Things tend to get booked out or more expensive during school holidays or even public holidays, those kinds of things. When we were planning our trip, we put it all in a spreadsheet, which is so dorky, but it is really helpful. I like fought the urge to do the spreadsheet for ages, but it is really helpful. And we'd essentially lay it out like, you'd have where you start your day, where you end your day, how many kilometers that is, how long that's going to take. And then honestly, we would put how much fuel is expected to cost, because that can help you budget. And then we put the accommodation, if that's been booked, all that kind of stuff. The thing is, when you're doing these long road trips, you need a lot of fuel. And so you're going to have to think about how far your car will go before it gets empty. Are you going to have to carry fuel? Make sure you figure out how to do that safely. And if you're going to rely on fuel stations, like how far can you reasonably go between fuel station stops? Because you might find the roads that you take will depend on which has more fuel stations. It sounds ridiculous and it is a lot of maths, but I definitely recommend kind of putting it in a spreadsheet and ticking things off as you go. When you're thinking about how long to spend in each location, pick a couple to do a couple of buffer days on, because things can go wrong. So for example, for us, when we were crossing from Queensland into the Northern Territory, I believe, a truck went past, flicked a rock, and it put a crack in our windshield. Now, thankfully, we could take a few days away from a later part of our trip to have extra time in Darwin where we were able to get the windshield fixed. But if we had kept everything really tight, we wouldn't have had that flexibility, and it would have had ramifications for like the whole rest of the trip. When you're planning your trip, do try to stay in some of those little weird towns. Like I'm talking towns that have like a few houses, a servo, maybe a pub, and honestly, maybe all of that is rolled into one. There's something really special about seeing these parts of Australia that so few other people see. You're not going to see them if you are flying into the country or flying into states. So it's a really cool thing to experience. And these towns often have like cute, weird little tourist things. Like one town we visited had like old machinery from the local farms just lined up on the side of the road, and it's cool to get to see these things. Unfortunately though, unless you have unlimited time and unlimited money, there are things you are going to miss. There are so many things that I wish we could have done on our trips that we've not gotten to yet, and that's kind of just part of the deal. You have to accept there's no way you can do everything. Oh, and last thing about planning the trip before I move on to other topics, don't drive at night. If you are new to doing road trips in Australia, or if you're really seasoned at driving in the country, it's not worth it. Because if you're tired after a long day of driving, there's kangaroos, there's cows, there's all sorts of things. It's just getting harder and harder. And especially when you're driving into parts of the country you've not been to before, it can be a little bit scary. You don't know exactly where you're going. You might miss your turn off, and it's just not really worth it. So for us, even if it meant getting up really early, we would try to stop driving by sunset. And I highly recommend that to anyone else. All right, now let's talk about accommodation. So let's talk about motels first. When we did our big road trip around the country, we camped when we had a longer period of time, but if we were only doing overnight stays, we decided to get motels because our tent took a little bit of time to set up and pack down, and we didn't want to lose those hours that we could spend driving. We were on a really tight schedule. Motels are so funny to stay at because sometimes you're in a town that is literally just the servo or the pub with a motel attached. And I have a special place in my heart for these places. However, sometimes, they're not going to be super, super great. They might be a little bit run down, they might not be super clean, and it is kind of just part of the deal. Regardless though, when you are booking them, call them. Old motels that are run by like one lady, they are not going to have a good website. Their websites are usually pretty bad, and I find emails can be patchy as well because a lot of these places don't have great reception. So just call them. If you are running late and you need late check-in, call them. If you booked this 3 months ago and now it's a week before, call them, check about your booking. It is absolutely worth it. People generally appreciate you checking in and making sure everything's correct because it saves them having to sort things out when you get there and something went wrong. Google reviews are really helpful for trying to see if where you're staying is any good. Honestly, it's a lot of people just complaining because they don't realize what these motels are like, and you can kind of get used to filtering those out. But what I do recommend keeping an eye out for are like people who said loved it, returning next year, or we come here every year, because there's some motels or caravan parks that have like local lore about them, like Daily Waters, for example. I know when we were booking there, I nearly accidentally booked just like the local motel or whatever, which is not fun, whereas Daily Waters is super, super fun and well worth visiting. So have a little look at Google reviews and see if you can find out where the regulars are going. Finally, on the motels, they're not cheap. Like these places, in my experience, cost about $150 a night. So that's important to think about when you're budgeting out your trip. All right, now let's talk about camping. I mentioned before that I like to be comfortable, and honestly, one of the easiest ways to be comfortable when camping, and I know it's a little bit like embarrassing to say that these are the places you want to stay, but I really like staying at just those chain caravan parks because when you have spent 10 hours driving, sometimes you just want some convenience, and being able to have a maintained like shower and toilet block, being able to ask at reception if you need help for something. And honestly, some of these places have like food trucks that come by. They're often in good locations close to the beach or close to town. You really can't beat the convenience. Obviously, if you are a really experienced camper or you're going somewhere where the local caravan parks, those like chain ones, don't look as fun, branch out. But if you're on a really long road trip and you want to find ways to be more comfortable, I definitely recommend those kinds of places. All right, finally, let's talk about packing. Now, I found what I packed made a huge difference on how comfortable I was on these road trips. First of all, you don't have much room, so you're gonna have to pack clothes that are practical and versatile. If you've not been to Australia before, thankfully, we're a very casual place. For me, I packed a couple of linen pieces, stuff I could swap in and out of in similar colors so you could kind of mix and match as you go. I do recommend packing like 2 pairs of pajamas, because then when you've showered, you can feel really clean and like tuck yourself into bed and it feels really nice. And I also recommend packing like one nice dress or one nice outfit that you don't wear except for when you want to go out to dinner, because when you go to these towns, sometimes you want to forget you're staying in a tent and you just want to have a normal night at the pub, so you can pull that outfit out for those occasions. For shoes, if you're doing a road trip around Australia, honestly, you could get away with just sandals if you had a really good pair of sandals, because that will take you to the beach, it will take you on a walk, and it'll take you to the pub. But realistically, I think sandals, a pair of thongs or Crocs for in the shower at the beach, and then like sneakers, because you might need even if you're not hiking, you might need to fix the car on the side of the road, or you might be somewhere where there's snakes and you're going to want enclosed shoes. Continuing along with packing, something that I put a lot of thought into was like toiletries and makeup and stuff, because I didn't want to sacrifice feeling clean while on an 8-week road trip, especially because, you know, there's parts where you're camping and you don't mind like basically just swimming in the beach every day, and then there's parts of your trip where you're going out to dinner with friends that you're visiting, so you have to be able to like go between both of those contexts. And something I found really helpful was I would have like a larger toiletries bag where I would have everything I need in it, and then I'd have a smaller one that I would take to like the bathroom block at the caravan park, because those caravan park bathrooms, sometimes, I don't know how, every surface is covered in sand, all of it's wet, and there's like 3 old ladies that are nude getting changed, and you like just want to be in and out as quick as you can and not drop all your makeup on the floor. So I would have a smaller bag that I would put like my toothpaste, my toothbrush, like my body wash, whatever, and I would take it in there, bring it back, and then put it all in my larger toiletries bag. Something else that really helped with the sense of comfort and feeling at home no matter where you're staying, because I'm someone that does get homesick. I love to nest, I love to feel cozy. And so something that I could do to bring that along with us was bringing either our own pillows when we had room for that, always a blanket, and then at least like your own pillowcases or sheets, because obviously when you're camping you need those things. But even in the motel room, if you can bring in your own pillows or even just your own blanket, it makes you feel so much more at home and more comfortable. In addition to this, I hate big light, those fluorescent bars that like have almost like a ringing to them when you turn them on. That is most commonly the lighting you're going to have in motels. So we would take the little lamp that we might have from the tent for when we're camping and take it into the motel room, so we could use that when we're like reading or watching YouTube at night or whatever, just to make it feel a little bit nicer. Oh, also fairy lights. Pack some fairy lights to put out the front of your tent, which adds to the vibe. And also it helps you find your tent in the middle of the night when it's dark and a little bit spooky. I could talk about this for hours, so let me know if you have any tips that you'd like to share in the comments. Drop any questions below. And yeah, join me next time, because I'm going to talk about what it's like to do these road trips with a puppy.